Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 16th of April. And here is a great article by Matthew Goodwin, and it is Brexit is just the beginning and the old EU order is cracking. And that's going to be our topic this evening. And a very warm welcome to all of you who are returning to my channel, and a really great shout out to any new people who are joining me this evening, and I hope you'll stay with this channel and like, comment and subscribe. Please join the conversation. We are at a really important juncture in our history, and there are many things which we need to discuss. And this is one of them, the rise of populism. Is it a passing fad? Is it going to stick around? Is it going to stand the test of time? And is it a threat? Well, answer that last question, it certainly is a threat to some people, there's no doubt about it. But why the rise in populism, and why right now? And I think there are several reasons for this. Firstly, we have the sort of mechanical or the physical reasoning behind this, because you know the EU, for example, which is the centre of globalism right now, has been a showcase for the last 45 years. And so after 45 years you have a pretty good idea of what things are going to look like, how things are going to run, and how well everybody is doing. Okay, so what do we see in Europe? Well, we see banks that are saddled with debt and are struggling to maintain liquidity and solvency, and this is all over Europe. And not only that, the people are saddled with debt. Not only the debt of their country, but their own personal debt, whether it be mortgages or personal borrowing. And why have the people gone into debt? Well, that is because of ever increasing inflation. The good jobs have left Europe. They have gone to Southeast Asia, China, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. So now the level of income has dropped significantly in all of these countries. In fact, France basically is starting to look a lot more like Greece, rather than Greece looking a lot more like France. And especially high is the youth unemployment. We have between 20 and 50% youth unemployment across Europe. These are depression levels. In fact, they're higher than depression level unemployment. The cost of housing has gone through the roof. Okay, there's been the gentrification of just about every city in Europe, and this has driven house prices to a point that it's forced people into rural areas or urban areas where they can afford to, and they commute to and from work. And as I said, these are lower paying jobs, and they have to drive further to get them. So of course, when you introduce something like a carbon tax, that is a real hit. The cost of the bureaucracy in Brussels to run this whole schmozzle is absolutely astounding. It's unbelievable. 1.3 trillion euros for the next 4 years. I mean, that is an unbelievable amount. But one of the things that's not been taken into account here is the human nature element of all of this. Human beings, they like to belong. They like to feel like they belong to something. And the European Union, basically with the euro and the breaking of borders and the headquarters being in Brussels, people have lost their sense of identity. There's nothing to hold on to in their countries anymore. They don't feel like they're part of Europe anymore. You know, Brussels is so far away from everybody, and the whole bureaucracy makes it absolutely impenetrable. And so, you know, people don't feel like they really belong to the whole situation. Along with that, human beings have a strong desire to be recognized. And you know, you can see this when you go onto Facebook pages and so on and so forth, YouTube channels. People just love to communicate. They love to belong to groups, to join together with like-minded individuals, like, dislike, communicate in this fashion. You know, we're very social creatures. So we like to be recognized, we like to belong. The things that we hate is uncertainty. and all of the things that are going wrong in the EU and of course in the broader world as well, we have very similar conditions here in Canada and the US, are making people extremely uncertain. The cost of living has risen to a point where they've had to move, like I say, into maybe smaller homes. Maybe they've had to hold off raising a family, or maybe the family units have had to cut back on the things that they give to their children, like extracurricular, sports activities, dancing, tuition, and so on and so forth. So it's taken away people's hope. Their standards of living have been absolutely dashed. They're confused and dazed. They don't understand what is going on. Things seem so far out of reach. Things seem unchangeable. When you try and do something, when you try and, go to a government department or write to a newspaper, it seems like nothing happens. There seems to be no way to resolve this unless you quit your job and go and work full time on this one particular issue. And so people feel basically disenfranchised. And this is the reason that the populist parties have made a sudden surge in popularity. Okay, so let's pop over to these couple of articles and we'll come back and we'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. Brexit is just a start. The EU's old order is cracking. Matthew Goodwin. Theresa May's failure to deliver Brexit means that in only 6 weeks' time we will join voters in every EU member state in heading to the polls to decide who will represent them in the European Parliament, an institution that now has significant influence on the EU's overall direction. Unless Labour and the Conservatives can cobble together a Brexit deal that is supported by Parliament, then Britain's election-weary voters will have their 5th nationwide election in only 6 years. The elections would become a proxy battle between Remainers and Leavers in the Brexit war. Research tells us that our identities as Remainers or Leavers are already just as important to us as our traditional party political loyalties. From The Guardian, national populism is unstoppable and the left still doesn't understand it. Matthew Goodwin. It's not about immigration, the financial crisis, globalization or inequality, but evidence of a broader, older social fragmentation. For a number of years, Europe has been in the midst of a significant challenge from national populism, as a succession of recent elections have shown in Italy, Austria, Hungary and Sweden. Yet this is a movement that remains poorly understood. Parties on the radical left and Greens are also making gains in some countries, but they are having nothing like the electoral or policy impact of the far right. It has emerged in democracies that were always thought to be immune to this political force. When I first started working on the subject in the late 1990s, an unwritten law of sorts was that there were 4 democracies that would never succumb. They were Sweden, the Netherlands because they were historically liberal, in the UK because of its strong political institutions and civic culture, and Germany because of the stigma left by the events of the Second World War. But fast forward only 20 years and each of those countries has now experienced a major populist rebellion. Pim Fortuyn and then Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, the Swedish Democrats who recently reached a new record share of the vote, Alternative for Germany, which has more than 90 seats in the Bundestag and seats in 15 of Germany's 16 state parliaments. And in the UK, Nigel Farage and the UK Independence Party forced a referendum on Britain's EU membership, which voted for Brexit. Sometimes we forget how quickly radical change in politics can occur. The left has always struggled to make sense of national populism, which seeks to prioritise the culture and interests of the nation, and promises to give voice to a people who feel that they have been neglected, even held in contempt by distant and sometimes corrupt or self-serving elites. And today's thinkers, writers and groups on the left have subscribed to a number of theories, all of which are incorrect. They claim this volatility is simply a short-lived backlash against something, whether immigrants or the system, rather than a positive vote for what national populists are offering, not only more restrictive immigration policies but also a more responsive political system and more equal economic settlement. The current wave of national populism actually began decades ago in the late 70s and 80s, a backlash to the 60s liberal revolution that never truly went away. So what is really going on? National populism is revolving around 4 deep-rooted societal shifts, the 4 Ds. First, there are the high levels of political distrust which are being exacerbated by populist leaders who paint themselves and their followers as victims of a political system that has become less representative of key groups. Secondly, many people have strong and entrenched fears about the perceived destruction of national cultures, ways of life and values amid unprecedented and rapid rates of immigration and ethnic change. Accompanying this distrust and fear are anxieties related to deprivation and loss of jobs and income, along with a strong sense that they and their ethnic and social group are being left behind relative to others in society. Finally, many political systems in the West are having to grapple with a new era of de-alignment in which bonds between voters and traditional parties are breaking down, and hence the path for new political challenges is much more open. When you take a closer look at these four currents, it becomes abundantly clear that there is nothing ephemeral about national populism, and we will be living in an era of heightened volatility for many years to come. Matthew Godwin is a co-author of National Populism, The Revolt Against Liberal Democracy. And here is more evidence. Matteo Salvini announces new European alliance of far-right populists. Populist leaders in Milan on Monday included from the left Olli Kottro of Finland, Jörg Meuthen of Germany, Matteo Salvini of Italy, and Anders Vistisen of Denmark. Treviso, Italy. Matteo Salvini, the anti-immigrant politician who is the most powerful figure in Italy's government, on Monday announced the formation of a new European alliance of populist and far-right parties ahead of the critical European Parliament elections in May. Others will join between now and the 26th of May, the last day of voting, Mr. Salvini, leader of the League Party in Italy, said at an event in Milan with allies from Denmark, Finland and Germany. Our objective is to be the force of government and change in Europe. Now, another big problem that we have with governments is the governments of today are basically putting lofty ideals before bread and butter issues. And more people, as I say, are becoming disenfranchised, and these bread and butter issues are of real importance. So, take for example a chap who's had to move out in my own province here from Toronto to, say, Barrie. He's now driving every day into work, or his wife is driving every day into work into Toronto. That is about an hour and a half to an hour and 45, depending on traffic conditions. And the roads aren't in very good condition. Maybe the highways are not bad, but when you get into Toronto, the roads are falling apart. The roads in Barrie, where he left, are falling apart. The rural roads are falling apart. And so every bump, he's being reminded of all the work that's not getting done in the country, the infrastructure that is not getting replaced. Every time this person, this husband or wife, goes to the supermarket, they see the increase in the cost of living, and then you slap a carbon tax on the whole thing. This person is already angry. They're already angry because they're too busy trying to put food on the table. There's nowhere to have an out for that anger. And so something like a carbon tax comes in, and next thing you know, they're putting on a yellow vest and they're marching down the street. There should be no surprise. This is basically psychology 101. But unfortunately, we have reached such a point of separation between our leaders and what's really going on where the rubber hits the road, that people are losing it. And this is the attraction of a populist movement. Because, look in the last election with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton barely visited any of the flyover states, as they call them, which would be the Rust Belt, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, Oklahoma. These was the industrial heartland of America that's been gutted by the externalization of jobs, by the exporting of jobs to foreign countries. And Donald Trump went down and he worked hard at his rallies in those particular states, recognizing the plight of the people. Okay, this is why they reached out to him, because he reached out to them. And Matteo Salvini is doing exactly the same thing. He's listened to the people. The people in Italy are concerned about immigration. And he's making a move to stop illegal immigration into Italy. Consequently, he's extremely popular in that country. This is hardly surprising. You just have to read some of the headlines that I've shown you. You just have to read some of the signs that are out there in front of your face and, lead a regular life, and you can see all of these things absolutely as plain as the nose on your face. Unfortunately, when you are catered to, when you went to elitist colleges and universities and you have high-flying jobs where you don't even have to find out what the cost of a pound of butter is, and you drive in a limo and the gas is paid for you, and you don't have to put your hand in your pocket and pull out those few dollars to fill up your tank so you can go to work and make a few more bucks. And that's the problem. That's why populism is rising. And it's going to continue to rise. This will not end until the situation on the ground ends. And I don't see anything ending very, very shortly. Unfortunately, the governments that we have in power right now just don't seem to recognize any of this. So expect to see more populist governments in the future. How that will end up, we're going to have to find out. And please, if you've enjoyed this video, like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a great week coming up, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Okay, see you now. Bye.